So we're now going to go to Amanda. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming. Now, Amanda's going to talk about her personal experience of being in a female prison with men and the impact it has on vulnerable women. Also about the Scottish Government's deplorable actions. So thanks so much, Amanda, and over to you.
I was put in Cortonvale prison on remand, so I was never sentenced. Okay, so I was held on remand until I was to go to trial. And I was first put in Cortonvale, which is a women's prison. And, you know, it was, you know, it's horrendous. You can read I can send anyone my story or post it or put it on the website or anything, because at first I was anonymous. So now I'm quite willing to give anybody access to the emails and things that I've written that you might not have necessarily seen or known it was myself that had done that. So it's a women's only prison, but there are in Cortonvale, there are two a cell. So there's 2 women in every cell. But I was held there only for 2 days because I think I was taken into the police cells on the Thursday night, and I had to appear at court on the Friday morning, and they decided that I was to be remanded. And the protocol must be that they take us to Cortonvale, which is miles away from Greenock prison, miles and miles and miles away. And then they decide where we're eventually going to be placed. So it was decided that I would be placed in HMP Gateside, which is in Greenock. And I think it's the oldest prison in Scotland. So Cortonvale is a women's prison, but Gateside is a male prison. But they have a female wing now. There's only 50 women in that wing. 40 or 50 women in that wing. So it's still very male dominant, but there's a women's wing. So I didn't see any men when I was in Cortonvale, but I do worry that if there were any men in there, the cells were double cells, they weren't singular cells. So possibly these women could actually be sharing cells with these violent men, like Sonia said, the likes of Adam Graham, who calls himself I Love Iceland or whatever it is. But when I was moved to, and also in Cortonvale, they do have showers, even though it's 2 to a cell, they have showers in their cell, so you can shower in privacy. When I was moved to Greenock, with single cells, but those cells don't have showering facilities. So you had to shower in communal shower areas. And I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of Rona Hotchkiss, who speaks a lot on this. She was actually my governess when I was in Gateside. And I've said this a million times and I'll continue to say it. She is as lovely outside as she was to me inside, and I didn't know about any of this stuff that was going on. So, excuse me, she's just a genuine soul. So there's communal showers there, and when I got to Gateside, there were 2 men. I've since learned that these 2 men, and I'm almost 100% sure that these 2 men feature on the website called Transcrime UK. So one of them, I'll just quickly tell you. So one of them goes by the name of, his name is Alan Baker, but his woman's name is Alex Stewart. So he was in Gateside when I was there, the dates match up and everything, okay? So obviously I didn't know his male name because we weren't allowed to call him his male name. We weren't allowed to call him he. You know, he had to be treated like a woman, or else we could lose all our privileges. We could lose our visitation rights, you know, loads, everything, loads. We could actually be charged as well. or given a bad report, which then means the women who rely on a good report to be let out on parole or whatever the words are, that would be looked upon really, really badly. And it could be the difference between that woman getting home to her children and not, just by calling this man he. So his name is Alan Baker, but he goes by Alex Stewart if you want to look it up. When I was in there, he's a gay man. That's what I knew him as. So he was put in there for 19 years because he was 25 and he murdered a 36-year-old man. After having met this man via an online gay dating service, Baker stabbed Mr. Weir at least 16 times in the chest at his home. Judge Lord Boyd said Baker was guilty of a wicked and brutal attack. So this 19-year-old man has met a 36-year-old man on a gay dating site and stabbed him repeatedly 19 times. He was then put in Gateside prison with women. I don't care that it was a man that he murdered. It doesn't make any difference to me whether it was a man or a woman, because the Scottish Prison Service seem to think that it really makes a difference. We won't put any of these violent men who claim to be women into prison if they've committed violence against women, but we'll quite happily put them in if they've murdered men. Okay. So this man formed a relationship with a fellow trans-identified male, which means she was a woman. She was a murderer. She was called Sophie Eastwood. It was reported that they'd been subjecting female prisoners, witnessing them having sex, etc. And now this man, Alex, is apparently engaged to the child killer, Naomi Faye. If anybody doesn't know who she is, look her up. Her and her wife murdered a 3-year-old child. She's apparently a lesbian and this man's gay, but now they're engaged in the prison. Now, I've heard about going gay for the stay, but I've never heard about going straight for the stay. So it doesn't even matter if these men come in and they're gay. It doesn't matter. Prison is a totally different environment, and you will never understand what it is like to be in there and what those women have to do to survive, unless you've actually experienced it. The other man that I was in with, we were supposed to call him Laura. Now, bear in mind, these are both men. None of them were taking hormones. None of them had any surgery. None of them were women before they came to prison. One was a gay male and one is a heterosexual male claiming to be a lesbian because he's claiming to be a woman. Now, this man was about 6'3". He was about 30 stone. And he had no hormones, no anything, as I've said before. And we all had to call him Laura. And he had committed crimes against women, really serious crimes. And you'll also be able to find him on Trans Crimes UK. We are subjected to these men who are extremely violent, whether it's towards women or not. And we have no choice but to accept these men. I wanted to touch on something that recently, because we have a case in the Scottish Parliament just now, I think it's called a lessons learned case about Adam Graham, aka Isla Bryceland. So the criminal, let me find it. The Justice Secretary, he was really annoying me. Here it is. The Cabinet Secretary for Justice and Veterans. This is a quote from what he said the other day. As MSPs, it falls on us, in my view, to provide responsible, rational and compassionate leadership. And I hope the committee would agree that it would be abhorrent if any legitimate scrutiny of this matter is allowed to, wait for it, fuel the view that trans women, right, which are men, we know that, somehow impose an inherent risk to women. So change that sentence. It would be abhorrent if any legitimate scrutiny of this matter is allowed to fuel the view that men somehow impose an inherent risk to women. If we use the proper language, then nobody can really argue with that, because trans women are men and men do impose an inherent risk, and the statistics show us that. He then went on to say, that is clearly not the case, and I remain concerned that this view is even further marginalising trans individuals. As in any discussion involving the criminal justice system, we must also never forget that the victims who will be affected by these instances are also affected by the things that we say. I want to show you a statistic that I've seen from, I'm pretty sure it was Women's Place UK, evidence submitted to Parliament in 2021 by Professor Rosa Friedman, Professor Kathleen Stock and Professor Alice Sullivan on offending rates calculated from the Ministry of Justice. So that's our Ministry of Justice, that's our official statistics. You can't argue with them even if you try. Male prisoners who identify as transgender women appear to be more likely to be imprisoned for sexual offences than other male prisoners. And they have given a respective figure of 59% v 17%. So 59% of men who claim to be women. So yes, there is a difference, but now we have this sacred caste of men who can just claim to be women without doing anything at all. And nobody can say anything. Nobody can the women in prison, sorry, they can't say anything, they can speak about reality, they can get away from it, they can't have a voice, they can't do anything. They were speaking about, I think it was Pauline McNeill brought up, she read out part of my testimony, and I don't know how she got it, she's obviously seen it online. She read it out and she said that she had already brought it up in a parliamentary way, and that she was fobbed off and told that it wasn't true and that it was lies, etc. So, but also Rona Hotchkiss said the same thing, and Pauline McNeill brought that up. So basically what Pauline McNeill was saying from my point of view was, okay, you might have a bias and you don't want to listen to a woman who's been in prison. Well, here's a prison governess who's got, I think, 30 years experience, telling you the exact same thing as what the prisoner is saying. So if you're going to do it on a class basis or, you know, whatever it is, then what you're going to do. And basically this woman and the Ministry Justice Secretary called both of us a liar. So I managed to trawl through a lot of prison footage from documentaries from prisons from years ago, and I managed to find a clip that shows you the communal showers in Gateside HMP Greenock. I don't tell lies, I've got no reason to tell lies. I'm not looking for compensation, I have nothing to gain from this, apart from helping these women who don't have a voice. So I managed to find that clip and I've sent it to Pauline. These women are, everything I've said, they are showering with men, they are naked, and they are at risk. And I also want to say, even putting the single showers in the single cells, it doesn't matter. We still have our dignity and our respect and whatever. Even if they have their penis cut off, we still don't want them in there. One man in a prison with 40 women can totally change that dynamic. One woman put in a prison with 50 men, it's a very different story. These women need to be heard, and thank you.